10 people faced animals designed by evolution to kill humans instantly. All 10 should be dead. None of them are. And by the end of this video, you'll question everything you know about survival. The grizzly that couldn't finish the job. Hugh Glass should have died 3 different ways in the span of 5 minutes, but the universe apparently had other plans. It was August 1823 in the remote wilderness of South Dakota, when Glass, a seasoned frontiersman, stumbled directly into a grizzly bear protecting her cubs. What happened next defies every law of human survival. The massive sow, weighing over 600 pounds, immediately mauled Glass with claws longer than kitchen knives. She shredded his scalp, leaving it hanging in bloody strips. Her jaws crushed his ribs like dry kindling and tore open his throat, exposing his windpipe to the Dakota air. But the bear wasn't finished. She picked up Glass's broken body and slammed him repeatedly against the ground, puncturing his lung and leaving deep claw marks that would scar his back permanently. His fellow fur trappers, watching in horror, finally drove off the bear with gunfire. They examined Glass's mangled form and made a grim assessment. The man was dying. His breathing was a wet, rattling sound. Blood poured from wounds that should have killed him instantly. Here's where the story becomes medically impossible. Glass regained consciousness as his companions were digging his grave. Refusing to die on schedule, he began an epic crawl toward the nearest settlement 200 miles away. For 6 weeks, Glass dragged his broken body across the wilderness, eating berries, roots, and when infection set into his wounds, something truly desperate. He allowed maggots to feast on his rotting flesh, then ate them for protein, essentially using his own decay as a survival system. Glass walked into Fort Kiowa in October, skeletal but alive, stunning everyone who had already mourned his death. The grisly attack that should have killed him in minutes instead became a 2-month ordeal that he somehow survived through sheer biological impossibility. But surviving a grizzly bear attack is merely improbable. What happens when you find yourself inside the jaws of the ocean's most perfect killing machine is something else entirely. Swimming with a living torpedo. When a 12-foot great white shark decides your lunch, survival statistics drop to virtually zero, unless you're Rodney Fox. December 8, 1963. The waters off Aldinga Beach near Adelaide, Australia, were crystal clear as Fox competed in the South Australian Spearfishing Championship. At 23 years old, he was an experienced diver, but experience means nothing when you become the target of evolution's most perfect killing machine. Fox was floating on the surface, removing a fish from his spear when the ocean exploded beneath him. The great white hit him with the force of a freight train, its jaws clamping around his entire torso like a biological vice. Those infamous serrated teeth, each one razor-sharp and designed for maximum tissue damage, punctured his wetsuit and sank deep into his flesh. The shark's bite force, measured at over 4,000 pounds per square inch, instantly crushed 4 of his ribs and punctured his right lung. But here's where physics should have ended the story. The shark dragged Fox 30 feet underwater, holding him in its jaws for what felt like an eternity, but was actually 30 seconds of pure terror. Fox could see the rows of backup teeth in the creature's throat, waiting to replace any that broke off in his body. His stomach was ripped open, exposing his intestines to the salt water. Blood clouded his vision as his punctured lung filled with seawater. In a moment of desperate clarity, Fox punched the shark directly in its sensitive nose and eyes. The startled predator released its grip, giving Fox the split second he needed to rocket toward the surface. His diving companions, watching the water turn red, hauled his mangled body onto their boat. Fox required 462 stitches and months of recovery, but he lived to tell a story that marine biologists still struggle to explain. Surviving a great white attack requires a combination of luck, quick thinking, and biological impossibility. But what happens when the killer isn't a predator at all, but Africa's most deceptively dangerous herbivore? inside the jaws of Africa's silent killer. Paul Templar became the first person in recorded history to be swallowed by a hippopotamus and lived to describe the experience from the inside. It was March 1996 in the Zambezi River near Victoria Falls, Botswana. Templar was guiding a group of tourists on what should have been a routine canoe safari when the river erupted around them. A massive bull hippo, weighing over 4,000 pounds, emerged from the depths with its jaws agape, revealing teeth the size of railroad spikes. What happened next defies every law of mammalian physics. The hippo's mouth, capable of opening to 150 degrees, engulfed Templar from the waist up. Those jaws, powered by muscles that generate 1,800 pounds per square inch of crushing force, clamped down on his torso. For perspective, that's enough pressure to snap a canoe in half, which is exactly what this particular hippo had been doing to the other boats in Templar's group. Here's where the story becomes medically impossible. Templar found himself inside the hippo's mouth, staring down its throat in complete darkness. The animal's molars, each one the size of a dinner plate, ground against his back and chest. His left arm was completely crushed, reduced to what he later described as a bag of broken bones. His lungs were punctured by the pressure, filling with the hippo's saliva and river water. But hippos don't just bite once. This territorial bull surfaced and submerged repeatedly, each time adjusting its grip for a more efficient kill. Templar was conscious through multiple attacks, feeling his ribs crack like dry twigs with each crushing bite. The hippo finally released him, only after one of his fellow guides struck it repeatedly with a paddle. Templar somehow swam to shore with a destroyed arm, punctured lungs, and internal injuries that should have killed him within minutes. He survived 7 hours of surgery and months of rehabilitation, becoming living proof that sometimes the impossible becomes merely improbable. But surviving massive trauma is one thing. Surviving when your blood itself becomes the weapon is an entirely different category of medical impossibility. The venom that forgot to kill. When Russell Viper venom enters your bloodstream, you have roughly 20 minutes before your blood turns to jelly, unless you're apparently immortal. In rural Karnataka, India, 2018, a tea plantation worker named Ravi Kumar was collecting leaves in the pre-dawn darkness when he felt a sharp pain pierce his ankle. In the beam of his flashlight, he saw the distinctive pattern of a Russell's viper slithering away, India's second most venomous snake and responsible for more snakebite deaths than any other species in the country. What followed was a race against biological chemistry that Kumar should have lost. Russell's viper venom is a cocktail of hemotoxins specifically designed to destroy blood's ability to clot. Within minutes of the bite, Kumar's blood began breaking down at the molecular level. The venom's phospholipase, two enzymes, started shredding his red blood cells, while hyaluronidase spread the toxins through his lymphatic system like wildfire. His blood pressure plummeted as internal hemorrhaging began. Here's where medical science hits a wall. Kumar was 6 hours away from the nearest hospital with anti-venom. By all documented cases, he should have bled to death internally within the first hour. His blood should have become unable to clot, causing fatal hemorrhaging from his organs. But Kumar's body somehow began producing an unprecedented immune response. As villagers carried him through the mountain paths, Kumar remained conscious despite massive envenomation. His ankle swelled to 3 times its normal size, turning black as tissue died, but the venom's systemic effects mysteriously plateaued. When he finally reached the hospital, doctors found his blood chemistry had stabilized on its own, something they had never seen with Russell's viper bites. Kumar survived with minimal anti-venom treatment, keeping his leg and his life in what toxicologists called a 1 in a million biological anomaly. His blood had somehow learned to coagulate again, despite venom specifically designed to prevent that exact process. But surviving venom that attacks your blood is merely improbable. The real impossibility begins when the venom is designed to shut down your brain, your heart, and every nerve in your body simultaneously. Transparent death from down under. The Irukandji jellyfish delivers enough venom to kill 60 adults, which makes surviving its sting statistically equivalent to winning the lottery while being struck by lightning. January 2014, off the coast of Cairns, Australia. Marine biologist Dr. Jamie Seymour was collecting water samples when something brushed against his wetsuit like a whisper of silk. The creature was virtually invisible, a translucent bell no bigger than a thumbnail, with tentacles thinner than human hair. But this tiny predator packs the most potent venom in the ocean, and Seymour had just received a full dose directly into his bloodstream. The initial sting felt like a mild bee sting, which is exactly what makes Irukandji so deadly. Victims rarely realize they've been envenomated until it's too late to reach medical help. For 20 minutes, Seymour continued his research, unaware that his cardiovascular system was about to declare war on itself. Then Irukandji syndrome hit like a freight train. The venom's neurotoxins began attacking his nervous system simultaneously from multiple angles. His blood pressure skyrocketed to stroke levels as the toxins caused massive vasoconstriction. Excruciating muscle cramps racked his entire body, pain so intense that victims often begged doctors to end their lives. His heart rate became dangerously irregular as the venom disrupted his cardiac rhythm. Here's where medical science encounters the impossible. Irukandji venom typically causes fatal brain hemorrhages within hours as blood pressure reaches catastrophic levels. The pain alone has driven victims into cardiac arrest from pure shock. Seymour's blood pressure reached 220 over 120, levels that should have burst blood vessels in his brain like overfilled balloons. But somehow, through a combination of immediate medical intervention and biological lottery luck, Seymour's body began fighting back. High-dose opioids barely touched his pain, but his cardiovascular system stabilized just short of total collapse. He survived 18 hours of agony that has killed much larger, stronger victims. Seymour became one of fewer than a dozen documented survivors of severe Irukandji syndrome, living proof that even nature's most perfect venom occasionally meets its match. But ocean predators at least give you the courtesy of attacking in their own territory. The real terror begins when the killer comes hunting in yours. The mountain ghost that missed. Mountain lions kill with surgical precision, one bite to the neck, instant death, which is why Anne Yeller's survival defies everything we know about apex predators. January 8, 2004, in the Whiting Ranch Wilderness Park near Mission Viejo, California. Yeller was mountain biking with her friend Debbie Nichols when 140 pounds of pure predatory evolution emerged from the chaparral. The mountain lion, a mature male with canine teeth over an inch long, attacked with the calculated efficiency that has made these cats the perfect killing machines of North America. Mountain lions don't maul their prey like bears or crush them like crocodiles. They execute with precision. The cat leaped onto Yeller's back, its rear claws digging into her torso for leverage, while its jaws clamped around her face and neck. Those canines, designed to slip between cervical vertebrae and sever the spinal cord, penetrated deep into her skull. The lion's bite force of 700 pounds per square inch should have crushed her cervical spine instantly. Here's where physics meets impossibility. As the cat attempted to drag Yeller into the brush, standard mountain lion behavior to avoid competition, her friend Nichols grabbed Yeller's legs and engaged in a tug-of-war with an apex predator. For 5 minutes, Nichols held on while the lion maintained its death grip on Yeller's head. The cat's powerful neck muscles, evolved to snap the necks of deer and elk, should have easily overwhelmed both women. But mountain lions, despite their reputation, rarely encounter sustained resistance. The combination of Nichols's desperate grip and other cyclists arriving with rocks and sticks confused the predator's hunting algorithm. The cat finally released Yeller and disappeared into the wilderness, leaving behind a victim who should have been dead minutes earlier. Yella survived with severe facial injuries and partial blindness, requiring extensive reconstructive surgery. But she kept her life in a confrontation where the predator holds every evolutionary advantage. Surviving a land-based apex predator requires luck, quick thinking, and helpful friends. But when you're facing the planet's most ancient and efficient killer, help isn't coming, and luck isn't enough. The crocodile's calculation error. Saltwater crocodiles have perfected killing for 200 million years, with a success rate that approaches mathematical certainty, until they met Val Plumwood. February 1985, in the remote wetlands of Kakadu National Park, Australia. Plumwood, a prominent philosopher and environmentalist, was paddling alone in a small canoe through crocodile-infested waters when the prehistoric nightmare emerged. A massive saltwater crocodile, measuring over 13 feet and weighing close to 1,000 pounds, exploded from the murky water with the force of a missile. What happened next challenges everything scientists understand about crocodilian hunting behavior. The attack was textbook predatory perfection. The crocodile's jaws, powered by muscles capable of generating 3,700 pounds per square inch of crushing force, clamped around Plumwood's canoe and her lower body. Those bone-crushing jaws, designed to hold struggling water buffalo, should have ended the encounter instantly. But the real horror was just beginning. Crocodiles kill through the death roll, a violent spinning motion that disorients prey while drowning and dismembering them simultaneously. The reptile dragged Plumwood underwater and began the signature rotation that has remained unchanged since the age of dinosaurs. Most victims lose consciousness within seconds as the centrifugal force scrambles their inner ear and the water fills their lungs. Here's where biology hits an impossible wall. Plumwood somehow remained conscious through not one, but 3 separate death rolls. Each time the crocodile spun her underwater, she fought back to the surface, gasping for air before being dragged down again. The physics should have been insurmountable. A 125-pound human cannot overpower a crocodile in its element using techniques perfected across millions of years of evolution. On the 3rd death roll, Plumwood managed to grab an overhanging branch and haul herself out of the water, while the confused crocodile still gripped her legs. She crawled 3 miles through the wilderness with massive injuries before reaching help, becoming the first documented person to survive multiple death rolls. But surviving the world's most ancient predator pales in comparison to facing an animal that considers humans nothing more than walking snack food in the planet's most unforgiving environment. The Arctic assassin's rare miss. Polar bears don't leave survivors. They're 1,500 pounds of perfectly evolved killing machine, which makes the survival of Horatio Chappell's expedition teammates a statistical impossibility. August 5th, 2011, on the remote Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard, 600 miles from the North Pole. A group of British students on a wilderness expedition was sleeping in lightweight tents when the Arctic's apex predator arrived for an early morning hunt. The massive male polar bear, weighing over 1,200 pounds, with paws the size of dinner plates, approached their campsite with the methodical patience that has made these animals the most efficient killers in the Northern Hemisphere. Polar bears don't attack impulsively like other predators. They stalk, they calculate, and they execute with mechanical precision. This particular bear systematically investigated the camp's perimeter before selecting his target, a tent containing several sleeping teenagers. With claws longer than steak knives and a bite force of 1,200 pounds per square inch, the bear began methodically shredding the tent fabric. Here's where human ingenuity met impossible physics. As the bear mauled 17-year-old Horatio Chappell, his friends Scott Benison Smith and others grabbed the expedition's emergency flare guns. Stopping a charging polar bear requires overcoming basic mathematics. These animals can run 25 miles per hour and have been known to break through solid ice with their bare paws. But flare guns fire magnesium projectiles that burn at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The group's coordinated volley of flares struck the bear center mass, creating enough pain and confusion to disrupt its predatory focus. The bear, faced with burning chemical projectiles and multiple human targets fighting back simultaneously, made a calculation that polar bears rarely make. It retreated. The attack lasted less than 3 minutes, but left Chappell fatally injured and 4 others wounded. Yet the majority of the group survived an encounter with an animal that views humans as nothing more than convenient protein packages. Their survival required split-second teamwork against a predator that has no natural enemies and considers the entire Arctic its personal hunting ground. But even polar bears seem gentle compared to Africa's most unpredictably violent herbivore. The Cape buffalo's unfinished business. They call the Cape buffalo Black Death for good reason. It kills more big game hunters than any other African animal, making any survival story a miracle by definition. October 2009, in the dense bushveld of Zimbabwe's Hwange National Park. Professional hunter Mike Tremaine was tracking a wounded Cape buffalo with his client when 1,900 pounds of pure African fury erupted from the thick Jesse bush. Cape buffalo don't just charge, they execute tactical warfare. This massive bull, with horns spanning over 4 feet and fused into a solid bone shield across his skull, had been circling back to ambush his pursuers with the calculated intelligence that makes these animals Africa's most dangerous game. The buffalo launched himself at Tremaine with the force of a freight train, covering 30 yards in less than 3 seconds. Those legendary horns, each one sharp enough to punch through a car door, caught Tremaine center mass and lifted him 8 feet into the air. The impact should have impaled him instantly, but the angle of attack drove the horn tips into his rifle instead of his ribcage, deflecting the blow by mere inches. Here's where physics becomes irrelevant. As Tremaine hit the ground, the enraged bull began the trampling sequence that has killed countless hunters. Cape buffalo don't just gore their victims, they systematically destroy them with hooves that can crack elephant bones. Each stomp delivers over 2,000 pounds of focused pressure. The bull's front hooves came down on Tremaine's chest, cracking 3 ribs, but somehow missing his heart and lungs by millimeters. But Cape buffalo are methodical killers. The bull repositioned for a finishing horn thrust when Tremaine's client fired a perfectly placed shot into the animal's brainstem. The buffalo collapsed inches from Tremaine's face, its horn tip touching his throat. Tremaine survived with broken ribs and massive bruising, but kept his life in an encounter where the margin of error measured in fractions of inches. His rifle had saved him from impalement, and his client's marksmanship had prevented the final killing blow. But surviving Africa's most dangerous herbivore is merely improbable. The true impossibility begins when you face a living dragon whose bite injects prehistoric death. The dragon's incomplete meal. Komodo dragons are living dinosaurs with venom that causes unstoppable bleeding and septic shock, which is why surviving their bite requires rewriting medical textbooks. August 2017, Rinca Island, Indonesia's Komodo National Park. Tourist guide Lon Kang led a group through prehistoric landscape when a 10-foot Komodo dragon emerged from undergrowth with patient hunger unchanged since the Cretaceous period. These modern dinosaurs don't just bite, they inject a cocktail of biological warfare, making survival virtually impossible. The dragon's attack was swift and calculated. Serrated teeth, designed like surgical saws, tore deep into Kang's leg as powerful jaws clamped down with bone-crushing force. But the real killing began when venom glands released their prehistoric payload. Komodo venom contains potent anticoagulants, preventing blood clotting, turning even small wounds into hemorrhage points. The toxins also induce rapid shock, by causing massive blood vessel dilation, dropping blood pressure to fatal levels within minutes. Here's what modern medicine calls impossible. Komodo dragon saliva contains over 50 bacteria species specifically adapted to cause rapid sepsis in bite victims. The combination of unstoppable bleeding and aggressive infection has a documented 100% fatality rate in the wild. Kang should have bled to death within the first hour as his cardiovascular system collapsed. But Kang's fellow guides acted with unprecedented speed, applying tourniquets and emergency pressure bandages while radioing for immediate helicopter evacuation. The race against biological chemistry began as his blood refused to clot and body temperature spiked with septic shock onset. Against all medical probability, Kang reached an advanced trauma center within 2 hours. Massive blood transfusions, emergency surgery, and aggressive antibiotic therapy somehow stabilized his condition before total organ failure. He survived with permanent nerve damage, but kept his leg and life. Kang became the first documented survivor of severe Komodo dragon envenomation. Hugh Glass crawled 200 miles with a torn throat. Rodney Fox punched a great white in the face. Val Plumwood survived 3 death rolls. Paul Templar lived inside a hippo's mouth. 10 people faced evolution's perfect killing machines and refused to die. The human will to live doesn't care about your odds. What would you survive?